From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Earl Foreman here.
Foreman?
Tri-State Life and Casualty. I'm the branch office manager down here.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Foreman, but the answer is no.
Well, this is an arson case, Dollar, and we're already having to make one payoff
I'm
on it.
sorry, but it'll have to wait. I'm going to get as far away from this New England winter as I can.
Well, for that, I don't blame you, but there's no reason you shouldn't
Look, I've had a rough year of it. I'm tired, and I'm cold. And unless I can get down to where the warm, balmy breezes waft in...
Dollar, I have got to have you on this case. There's a lot at stake. Now, my office is down here...
No, sir, I'm sorry. You
down
see...
here in Sarasota.
I just can't do it, Mr. Foreman. I've already made a plane reservation for Sarasota, Florida. And this is one time I'm going to... Where did you say your branch office is?
Sarasota, Florida.
Bob Bailey in the exciting adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Tri-State Life and Casualty Insurance Company, Home Office, Hartford, Connecticut. Following is an account of expenses incurred during my investigation of the burning car matter. Expense account item 1, which I thought I was going to have to absorb myself. $129, transportation and incidentals to Sarasota, Florida. It was nearly 5 p.m. when I got there, so instead of checking into a hotel, I taxied, that's item 2, $1 even. I taxied to Earl Foreman's office in the Conroy building. He turned out to be a tall, lanky, easygoing fellow with clear blue eyes and a ready smile.
Sit in an office and talk business this time of day? You're in Florida now, Johnny.
Well, I thought from your call this was a pretty urgent matter, Mr. Foreman.
It is.
Arson, you said.
Yeah, probably, but here's no reason we can't go out to my little shack on the quay and be comfortable while we talk about it. Besides, Michael wants you for dinner.
Mike?
My wife, Gertrude.
Oh.
Come on, my jalopy's right out at the curb. Come on, Johnny.
Poor man was a misnomer for this man because his jalopy turned out to be a spanking new Cadillac, complete with air conditioning and all the fixings. And the shack, anything but. It was on St. Armand's Key across Sarasota Bay from the mainland, a beautiful 2-story concrete and stucco job. The big yard backed on a quiet bayou, and there, tied up at a private dock, was a 24-foot lap-strake speedboat, ideal for fishing the Gulf of Mexico.
After all, as long as you're down here on expense account.
Yeah, but it's charged to your company, remember?
Oh. Hey, there she is at the door.
Huh?
The big, fat, overbearing broad I'm married to.
This was another switch. For Earl's wife, standing in the doorway, was the cutest little trick I'd seen in a long time. Petite, pretty, and blonde, and with eyes that you noticed right away because they were almost green. Eyes that suddenly narrowed as she looked at me. And I wondered why.
Johnny Dollar, did you say?
That's right. Insurance investigator down here to look into those fires.
Oh.
Any objections?
No. Oh, of course not. Just set your bags here in the hall, Johnny.
All right, thanks.
And wouldn't you like a drink after your long trip?
Yeah, and you can get me one, too.
Scotch, Johnny? Martin's VVO.
Oh, great. Well, soda, please.
Sit down.
Thanks. I take it Mike isn't too interested in the insurance business, huh?
You know, she used to be a singer, dancer.
Oh, well, this is a little different. But now, tell me all.
Well, actually, I guess we ought to wait until Arnold Carr gets back.
Carr?
Carr Brothers, Lumber Enterprises. Arnold runs the business, and his brother Edward... Well, Ed just shares the profits. Real black sheep of the family, from what I've been able to learn.
Oh?
Anyway, they have yards all over the state. There's one here in Sarasota, one up the coast a ways at Fort Pierce, and still another at Arcadia. That's about 40 miles inland, just east of here. And there was one up in Orlando.
Was?
Completely destroyed by fire a couple of weeks ago. And a $120,000 claim has been filed.
Wow.
That's where Arnold Carr is then, in Orlando, trying to clear things up. Here's your drink.
Oh, thanks.
Here, Earl.
Yeah. Well, to the gods and goddesses and us.
But Shouldn't I be up in Orlando then?
Arnold's on his way back here now. He lives here. He just went up there to arrange for clearing off and selling the property.
You mean he's planning to just pocket the money? If Tri-State pays off, I mean.
Looks like it.
But I take it you suspect arson.
Yes, Earl suspects arson, Johnny, and so does Arnold Carr. At least he says he does, but they have no reason.
No? How about the other fires? Or attempted fires?
Oh, where?
At Arcadia, for one, but they got it out in time.
At least that's the way Arnold Carr reported it. The way he
Let
tells
me tell it, Mike.
Oh.
There was another at the yard here in Sarasota. Arnold himself discovered it one night when he was just driving around.
But nothing to indicate it was attempted arson.
No,
Well,
and the authorities up in Orlando found no indication of it there.
Mike, you know as well as I do that a lumberyard fire will obliterate signs of arson better than any other kind of fire in the world.
But she has a point, though, Earl. Unless there's some evidence of arson.
Of course.
Yeah, why send for me?
Well, mostly because...
Actually, because Arnold Carr suspects it.
But he's given you no real reason.
None at all.
I think he has a real reason, but he just won't tell us. Wait till you see him. He's going to call when he gets in. We'll run over to his place on Longboat Key.
What about his brother? Edward, did you say?
I've never met him. He's always stayed in Orlando.
I was wondering if he might tell things that Arnold is holding back.
Edward Carr wouldn't know anything.
You can never be too sure. Look, why can't you agree with me for a... that must be Arnie now. Excuse me. Hello.
This is Arnold Carr.
Oh, hi, Arnie. Johnny Dollar arrived, so we'll be... Well, here, I'll let you talk to him. Here, Johnny.
No.
Okay.
No, Earl, listen.
What?
I told you before it was arson. It was arson again tonight.
Tonight?
What's that?
Arcadia just went up in flames. The whole yard.
Good Lord. Did you hear that, Johnny?
Yeah, I heard.
Well, can you prove it was arson tonight in Arcadia and before in Orlando?
I have proof.
Well, Arnie, we'll be over just as fast
No.
as... What?
No, wait for me there at your home.
Well, but look now.
You mustn't come here. And I mustn't stay here because I...
Now, listen, man. You, Arnie? Well, I guess he's ready to tell us now.
A suspicion began to grow in my mind. A suspicion that Mike apparently shared with me, that Arnold Carr himself might be responsible for the fires. After all, he was the only one who had seemed to know about the two unsuccessful attempts. He himself had planted the idea of arson. He'd lost no time in filing claim for the Orlando burnout. But Earl said I was wrong. Arnold was too honest a man. Earl had also said we were only 15 minutes from Carr's home. So when half an hour passed, we called him back. Got a busy signal. After the fourth try, the three of us took off in Earl's cab. As we pulled into Carr's driveway, we could see him through the picture window, sitting at his desk, telephone in hand, apparently engrossed in a call. Then, as we walked up to the door, I noticed something else. Arnold Carr looked enough like me to be my brother. Maybe that explained Mike's reaction when she first saw me. Hey, Arnie.
Can't you see he's on the phone in there?
Well, the least he can do is hear his own doorbell.
Earl, wait. Good Lord.
What's the matter?
Through the window.
Oh, no.
Earl?
Stand back.
Earl, for heaven's sake, what is it?
Couldn't you see from out there?
No, what's wrong? Oh,
Well, Johnny?
Right through the forehead, Earl. Looks like a 38. Before I could stop him, Earl took the phone out of the dead man's hand and called headquarters. Mike turned pale and slumped into a chair. And I gave the place a quick rundown, checked doors, windows, etc. A few minutes later, an officious young sergeant named Larkin arrived and took over.
38 caliber straight through the middle of the forehead. Were all three of you here when it happened? Mr. Foreman, Mrs. Foreman, and who are you?
The answer to your first question, Sergeant, no, none of us was here. And this is Johnny Dollar, insurance investigator.
You insurance guys work pretty fast. You related to Mr. Carr?
No, why?
You look a little like him. Who busted in the front door? The killer?
I did. When we drove up, we saw Mr. Carr sitting there at his desk. We rang the doorbell and knocked, but...
And when he didn't move, you took things in your own hands and busted in, huh?
That's right.
You haven't moved anything, have you?
No.
Except I took the phone out of his hand to call you.
Dollar, if you're any kind of investigator, you should have known better than let him touch anything. Now, let's see. The shot must have come from somewhere near this window by the fire. Ah, sure, here we are. Bullet hole right through the pane. Bullet was fired from outside.
You're sure, Sergeant?
Sure, I'm sure. Look for yourself. You calling yourself an investigator? Hey, Cummings, Wilway, check the area around that window beside the chimney out there for footprints. Maybe an empty cartridge case. Now, you folks get out of here so I can call Doc Hanley over and get on with my investigation. And no, Dollar, I don't need any of your help.
Well, thank you, Sergeant.
Your job is fires, not... Hey, where did Mrs. Foreman go?
Out to the car.
Why? Who told her she could leave?
Who told her she had to sit here looking at a corpse?
All right, Dollar, all right. Just be sure the three of you stick around town in case I decide to question you further.
Oh, of course, Sergeant.
Yeah.
Not shot by somebody standing outside? What do you mean, Johnny?
Oh, I spotted that bullet hole in the window, too.
So?
I also noticed there were no particles of glass on the inside sill.
But there were some on the outside.
Yeah. The shot that made that hole was fired from inside that room to make it look as though it had come from outside.
Then somebody was in there with Arnold Carr.
Yeah. Either somebody he let in or who had normal access to the house. And he had to stop Arnold from talking about the fire in Arcadia. Hey, how much do you know about his brother, Edward?
Well, nothing really outside of what Arnold told me.
Was either of them married? Family of any sort?
Arnie wasn't. But
Arnold's death means Edward will own the business then.
Well, yes.
And he lives up in Orlando, scene of the first big fire.
Yes, good heavens, Johnny, you don't think his own brother...
Where can I rent a car?
Take Mike's Chevy. It's in the carport at the house. But what are you going to do?
Drive up to Orlando by way of Arcadia. When I got to Arcadia, only a few people were standing around the remains of the fire. One hose company was still working on it, and a couple of police were poking about in the embers. Walking toward it, I almost stumbled over a little old man sitting alone in the darkness beside a palm tree, hunched over, his head in his hands, sobbing. He didn't even look up when I stopped beside him.
It's like losing part of my own life, it is.
You lost someone in the fire, sir?
No, son. Only part of my life. I helped build up that yard. Me and Mr. Arnie.
Arnold Carr.
All along, he's been worried about it. And last week, when him and me smelled smoke and come over here and put out the barrel of trash that was smoldering, he knew.
Knew what? That somebody was trying to burn him out?
That's why he stopped by tonight on his way home. That's why we drove over here, him and me. And I brought my gun just in case. Well, we got here too late. It was already blazing. And when he seen the automobile pulling away...
What auto?
Yes, Frank, he said to me. I knowed he was the one trying to burn me out, he said.
Who, old-timer? Who do you mean?
He didn't say. Then he called the fire department.
That car that pulled away, what was it?
Just a auto, big white Buick.
But he tied it in with whoever set the fire.
All he said was, I knowed he was the one.
Do you know who it was he meant?
Well, he told me even if I did know, I should never tell. Even the police.
Well, who do you think it was?
Break my word to Mr. Arnie? Never, son.
All right, look, old man, I'm sorry to have to tell you this. Mr. Arnie's dead.
What? But he can't be. He was... You.
Huh?
Maybe you thought in the darkness I wouldn't know you. But I do know you.
Oh, now, just a minute, old-timer.
If Mr. Arnie's dead, it's because you killed him.
What?
Just like you set the fire.
No, I'm not who you think I am.
And I'll kill you. That's what I'll do.
Put down that gun.
I'll kill you.
Act two of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment. Back in the old days, the very old days, that is, a girl named Cassandra had a corner on the Oracle market. But nowadays, you can do some foretelling yourself. On Jukebox Jury, for example, you can help decide which of Tin Pan Alley's new recordings are destined for the hit brackets and which ones are likely to spiral all the way down to oblivion. Remember, Jukebox Jury is yours to hear on most of these same stations every Sunday. Now, Act Two of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and the burning car matter.
Expense account, item 3, $5.15, gas for the borrowed Chevy to keep me going to Orlando. Either the old man's eyesight was bad or he was just a lousy shot. Either way, it was okay by me. I hated to slap him down, but there was no point hanging around Arcadia trying to explain things to the local authorities. So after making sure I hadn't really hurt him, I appropriated his gun and took off fast. He'd thought I was someone else. Even I had noticed a family-type resemblance to myself in Arnold Carr. Sergeant Larkin had asked me if I was related to him. And now the old man at the fire had apparently thought I was the one who... Oh, well, I'm afraid I made the rest of the trip to Orlando in somewhat less than legal time. And at police headquarters, I barged into the office of Lieutenant Cal Hudson without bothering to be announced.
So early in the morning? Sit down while I finish up report, Mr. Carr.
Thanks.
I'm trying to reach you, but we got no answer to the phone at your house.
Well, that's very interesting, Lieutenant.
I'm afraid I have the painful duty of notifying you that your brother Arnold down in Sarasota last night... Why did you say very interesting, Mr. Carr? Or had you already learned... Well, I'll be doggone.
Yeah. You're not the first one.
Who are you?
Johnny Dollar, insurance investigator.
I can't believe it. Dollar, you look enough like Edward Carr to be his twin. You even sound a lot like him.
I take it you haven't located Edward yet?
Well, no.
Lieutenant, I think Edward Carr is the firebug we're after. And the killer.
Wait a minute.
Briefly as possible, I told him of Arnold Carr's phone call to Earl Poorman, his emotional upset just before he was killed. I told him Arnold had been murdered by someone inside the house, someone close to him, and that everything indicated that someone could very well be Edward Carr.
That's still all just theory, Dollar, without any proof. Well, I will admit that Edward is a pretty worthless playboy living off the profits of the lumber yards.
Cummings.